My parents ignored my baby's shower because of the vacation with my golden sister. She is a real family unlike you. We need that, said my mom. Fine, expect the consequences, I said. The same day they tried to withdraw $3,000 from my card. I closed all the accounts they had access to, canceled all automatic payments, and sent the utility bill. 2 hours later, my mom called Nonstop, but it was too late. I did more. My name is John, and I used to think I was just the quieter sibling, the one who didn't need as much attention. It took me a long time to admit the truth. I was never the favorite. Not even close. My sister Amy was the golden child from day one. Straight A's, cheerleading, nursing school, married to a doctor. She could do no wrong, and if she did, it was somehow my fault. Growing up, I was the background character in my own house. I remember coming second in a state science fair. My dad asked me why I hadn't won first prize. Amy once made us salad for dinner, and they told her she should go on MasterChef. But I kept trying. I got a good job in cybersecurity, met an amazing woman who actually liked me for who I was, and we built a quiet, stable life together. When she got pregnant, something clicked in my brain. I thought maybe this was going to be the thing that changed everything. That maybe this time they'd come for me. We planned the baby's shower for the 8th of March. My wife's parents offered to hold it in their back garden. They put up decorations, hired a caterer, hired heaters in case it got chilly. Their family was excited in a way I wasn't used to. They texted us weeks in advance, asking what we needed, if we had a registry. Her uncle, who's basically a one-man construction crew, built a wooden changing table and drove 3 hours to deliver it himself. I phoned my parents a month before the shower. I told them the date, time, and place. They said they'd check their diary. The night before the shower, my mom hadn't said anything. I texted her to confirm. She said, "We'll see. Maybe I have plans with Amy. Depends." That was it. My stomach turned a little, but I didn't want to spoil the mood, so I kept it to myself. The day of the shower arrived. People started arriving, bringing gifts, smiling, hugging my wife like she was already part of their family. The garden looked incredible: streamers, pastel balloons, a huge table of desserts. It should have been perfect. Except that the 2 empty chairs reserved for my parents remained empty. I tried to phone once, just to check. No answer. 10 minutes later, Amy posted a photo on Instagram, her and my parents at a beach resort, drinks in hand. The caption read, "Finally a real family holiday. Much needed quality time." I stared at the caption for a long time. My wife's mother saw it over my shoulder and didn't say a word. She just rubbed my back once and walked away. I sent the photo to my mother. No text, no explanation. Just the photo. She replied within minutes. "She's a real family, unlike you. We need that." That sentence burned. Like all the other things I'd tried to ignore over the years, it just snapped into place. I showed the message to my wife, and she didn't even look surprised. Just hurt. I sent a message back. "Okay, wait for the consequences." And I meant it. A few hours later I got an alert from my bank. Someone had tried to withdraw $3,000 from one of my joint accounts. That's when it all started to crystallize. They weren't just emotionally absent, they were leeching off me. This account was originally set up to cover things around the family home when they were between jobs. They never stopped using it. So I sat down at my desk and started cutting the wires. I closed every account they had access to: checking, savings, credit cards, streaming services, utilities. I called every company and removed myself as a co-signer. I changed passwords they didn't even know I remembered. I printed out the utility bill and put it in the mail with a sticky note that said, "You owe me $312.48. Pay up." 2 hours later, my phone started ringing. Calls from my mom. Then my dad. Then Amy. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because this was just the beginning. And I had a lot more to do. The next morning they blew up my phone as if their lives depended on it. I ignored every call, every voicemail. My mum sent a series of texts, starting with, "What the hell are you doing?" and quickly escalating to, "You've always been ungrateful." And, "We've sacrificed so much for you." Classic. My dad finally sent one saying, "We need to talk face to face." So I texted back, "I agree. Come to the house." Noon. When they turned up, it was the 2 of them and Amy. She came dressed as if she thought we were having brunch. I left the front door open, stood back and didn't say a word as they walked in and saw my wife's parents, her aunt and uncle, and my own aunt and uncle all sitting in the living room. None of them looked very happy to see them. My mother tried to speak first, but I cut her off. I pulled out a folder and handed it to my father. Inside were printed statements from the last 18 months, the Netflix account they'd used but never paid for, petrol charges from my card I hadn't used, even an order for furniture from a website I didn't recognize. This is everything you've taken without asking. Don't worry, I won't press charges. But I have spoken to a lawyer. You might want to. Amy started to laugh, as if I was being dramatic. Then I handed her another envelope. This one hit harder. Inside were screenshots of texts she'd sent my wife over the last year. Petty things. Passive-aggressive jabs at her family. Your parents seem nice. Too bad they couldn't raise someone with ambition. Stuff like that. I looked at Amy and said, I've been collecting these for months. You thought we wouldn't notice because we were quiet. That's over now. They weren't expecting that. They expected the old John quiet, awkward, would rather let things slide than make waves. But I'd changed. Fatherhood does that. I told them they were no longer welcome in our home. My mother tried to argue, saying I was tearing the family apart. That's when my wife's dad, usually the calmest guy in the room, stood up and said, Your son is building something new. You're just angry that it doesn't involve you. I thought they'd leave after that, but they didn't. Amy stayed behind while my parents went out. She sat down and said she didn't deserve this, that she never meant to hurt anyone. I could tell that for a moment she thought she could spin it in her favor. I didn't even argue. I simply handed her a third envelope. This one contained something she definitely wasn't expecting, copies of an old email chain between my dad and a guy called Tom C., who turned out to be Amy's husband's partner at the clinic. Long story short, my dad was trying to use his influence to get Amy's husband to invest in a bogus software company that my dad was trying to set up with one of his old drinking buddies. The emails were full of lies, promises of big returns, mentions of John's company, as if I was somehow involved. She turned pale. I just said, You're not the only one with receipts. She got up and left without another word. And that would have been enough for most people. But I wasn't done. Because there was something else I had planned, and it was already in motion. Something they had never seen coming. A little surprise I'd had in my pocket since last Christmas. And it had to do with their house. 3 days after that meeting, I got a call from my Aunt Dad's sister. She was angry. Not with me, with my parents. Apparently, after they left my house, they tried to call every relative on their side to explain what happened before I could. Their version of events? I had a breakdown. I was emotionally unstable. My wife was controlling me. And most importantly, I was trying to destroy the family name. The family name. Like we're the Rockefellers or something. I wouldn't have even known what they were saying if my aunt hadn't called to tell me that my mother had actually accused me of embezzling from my own family. That's when something inside me snapped. Up until then I'd felt a kind of cold satisfaction when I'd cut them off, but now it just felt like rot. Like this thing had been festering for years and I kept calling it family because I didn't want to believe it was anything else. The next day Amy turned up at my job. She walked into the lobby like she owned the place and demanded to talk to me. The receptionist buzzed me and said it was a family emergency. When I came downstairs, she pulled me aside and told me that everything was getting out of hand, and that I needed to sort it out before Mum had another anxiety attack. I asked her if Mum had had an episode before or after she tried to drain my account. Amy didn't answer. She just said that if I really cared about my family, I'd find a way to make this right. That's when I realized she wasn't trying to fix anything, she was trying to keep the image intact. Not for me, not even for our parents, but for her. I told her she had 10 seconds to leave or I'd call security. She stared at me as if I'd spoken another language. Like I was speaking to her for the first time as someone who didn't owe her anything. That night I sat alone in my car for over an hour before I went in. I couldn't shake this weight. It was as if I was mourning people who were still alive. My wife found me sitting on the back deck, staring at nothing. She didn't ask anything. She just sat down beside me and waited. Finally I said, I think I tried to get something from them that they didn't have to give. She asked me what I meant. I said, love. Respect. All of it. I think I've been chasing it like it's mine and they've just forgotten. But it was never mine. I realized then that most of my adult life had been shaped by this hunger. Trying to get them to notice, to say I'd done well, to be proud. But I wasn't a son to them, I was a replacement. A replacement. And when they realized I had nothing more to give, they turned on me. That realization should have given me closure, but it didn't. It made me angrier. So I made another call. I rang Tom C., Amy's husband's business partner. I still had his number from when he had contacted me months ago, thinking I had something to do with the software pitch my dad had cooked up. He answered right away. I told him I had a feeling things were going wrong at his clinic, and he might want to check a few things. Especially any emails involving my dad. He sounded surprised but said okay. We hung up and I didn't think much more of it. Until 2 days later, when Amy's husband showed up at my door. Alone. No Amy. And he looked like someone who had just found a bomb buried in the garden. Amy's husband, Eric, stood at my door like he couldn't believe where he was. I hadn't seen him without Amy in years. He was always polite, quiet, the type who smiled too long and spoke too little. But that day he looked like he'd aged a decade in 48 hours. He asked to come in. I stepped aside. He didn't sit down. He just stood in my living room, looking around as if the walls might close in. I've been going through the clinic files, he finally said. Everything Tom and I signed in the last year. There were things I didn't approve. He paused and looked at me. Your father listed you as a silent partner in a medical billing scheme. One that funneled payments to a third party. I already knew that part. What I wasn't expecting was the next sentence. And Amy was the one who set it up. That stopped me cold. He told me it started small, just a few extra service fees tacked onto patient bills, nothing anyone noticed. Then bigger charges started slipping through, and when Tom flagged them, Amy brushed it off as a bug in the new software. Turns out it wasn't a bug. It was a setup. They were using my name, my LLC, my credentials, most of it outdated information from some freelance consulting I did years ago, and tying it into a system they thought no one would question because I worked in tech. Eric had just discovered that over $60,000 had moved through accounts he didn't recognize. And it all pointed back to Amy and my father. She told me it was temporary. He said that it was just to cover some debt your parents were drowning in. I asked him why he was telling me that. He looked right at me. Because I think she's about to throw you under the bus. And I'm not going down with her. He left right after that. I didn't try to stop him. I just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to process the fact that my own sister had actually committed fraud in my name. The next day, a letter arrived from a law firm. No email. Not a phone call. Just a printed letter in an envelope. It was a notice of potential legal inquiry regarding activities related to my LLC. Apparently, the clinic's accountant had reported some suspicious findings to the board of directors, and my name came up in the flagged transactions. I immediately called my attorney. He'd already helped me untangle myself from the accounts my parents had access to, so he was up to speed. But even he sounded surprised. They didn't just cross a line, he said. They dragged you into a full-blown financial crime. Then came the worst part. He asked, do you have a copy of your original LLC agreement? The one with your name, your tax ID number, and the termination clause? I said yes. I had it on file. Only when I really looked at it, I saw that it had been updated. The digital version had been changed 6 months ago. Someone had added language that made Amy and my dad authorized users, for expansion purposes. That night, I confronted my parents over the phone. They didn't deny it. My mom said, you weren't using it. We were helping. That's when everything clicked. The way they were treating me wasn't just neglect. It was calculation. They saw me as someone they could extract value from. Emotionally, financially, whatever. And Amy wasn't golden because she was perfect. She was golden because she played the game with them. Because she helped paper over the cracks. Because she did the dirty work while pretending to be the polished daughter on the beach. So I made another decision. I was going to end it. Not just emotionally. Not just cut ties. I was going to burn the whole thing down, legally, publicly, and permanently. And I knew just where to start. With a single email. To the IRS. When I hit send on that email to the IRS, I wasn't expecting fireworks. In fact, I wasn't expecting anything, not right away. But something shifted inside me the second I did. The fear I'd been carrying for years, the guilt, the need to make excuses for them, it started to quiet down. It took 5 days for things to escalate. On the 6th, Eric called me again. He said 2 men in suits had shown up at the clinic asking questions. Not local cops. Federal. I told him not to say another word and gave him my lawyer's number. Then I sat back and waited. 2 days later, the clinic closed, temporarily, for a financial audit. That was the word they used in their official statement, but people talk. I got texts from 3 different former classmates who worked in the clinic network. Amy's name came up in whispers. So did mine. But by now I'd completely washed my hands of it. My attorney had already contacted the IRS and the clinic's board of directors, backed by documentation showing that I hadn't touched the LLC in 2 years and hadn't authorized any changes. But Amy and my dad? That was another story. My mother tried to call me again. I didn't answer. Then she sent a message. I hope you're happy. You ruined your sister's life. I stared at the text for a while. Not a word about what they had done. Just blame. As usual. The next morning, I sent her my own message, a screenshot of the IRS confirmation number, and a single line. I didn't ruin her life. She did that herself. Then I blocked her. Things moved quickly after that. My aunt, the only one on my father's side who still talks to me, called to say that my parents were in trouble. Apparently their names were tied to some consulting payments that were part of the whole mess. It was said that they might lose the house. And the house, that was the one thing I hadn't touched. Not yet. You see, it was still technically in my name. They'd convinced me years ago that it would help with the taxes if I bought the place and let them live there. They'd pay the bills, they said. Just a formality, they said. Well, a few weeks ago, I pulled the mortgage records. And guess what? They hadn't paid a dime in 6 months. So I called the bank. Explained the situation. Explained the fraud. Explained that I, the legal owner, was no longer willing to cover a property that was being used as a base for financial crime. I gave them permission to proceed with the foreclosure. I didn't even feel bad. The house never felt like home anyway. The last message I received from my mother came the day they were served. She didn't say anything directly. She just sent me a picture of the front porch, empty and boxed up. Goodbye, I guess. I didn't respond. Because there was one more person I had to deal with before it was all over. Amy. Amy didn't reach out. Not even once. Not during the audit. Not when the clinic was temporarily closed. Not when her house was repossessed. She stayed quiet, radio silent, which was unlike her. Amy was always the one with something to say, a way to spin things in her favor. The silence made me uneasy. So I waited. Then, 2 weeks after the house went back to the bank, I got an email. Not a phone call, not a text. An email, as if we were colleagues. She wanted to meet in a neutral place to discuss a way forward. She offered a date and a coffee shop in a quiet part of town. It was all very polite. Carefully worded. I showed it to my attorney first. He gave me a nod and said, "Just don't go alone." So I didn't. I walked into the coffee shop with 2 things, a dictaphone in my pocket and my wife sitting at the bar nearby, just in case. Amy was already there. No makeup. Hair pulled back. She looked tired. Not broken. Amy didn't break easily, but rattled. She began by saying, "I didn't know Dad was going to use your name." I didn't answer. Then she added, "It was never supposed to get this big. It was just to help them. Just until things got better." Still nothing from me. That's when she snapped. "You got what you wanted. They're out of the house. I lost everything. Are you really going to sit there and act like a victim?" I finally looked at her and said, "No. I'm not the victim. I'm the one who ended it." She froze. For the first time in probably our lives, she didn't know what to say. I told her what I told the IRS, what I told Eric, what I'd shown the clinic board. That I had proof that I wasn't involved. That I had emails, screenshots, data. That if they tried to drag me down with them, they'd find out how airtight my case was. Then I leaned in and told her the one thing she wasn't expecting. "I don't care if you go to jail. But if you ever come near me, my wife, or my child when he's born, I will go public. I will bury you with everything I have. And you know how much I have." Amy said nothing. She got up, grabbed her purse, and left. I haven't heard from her since. My parents disappeared after the foreclosure. The last I heard through the family grapevine, they were staying with a cousin out of state, working things out. I didn't care. The truth is, I didn't do any of this to punish them. I did it to end it. To stop bleeding energy into people who treated me like a resource instead of a person. My wife and I welcomed our daughter 3 weeks later. No drama, no stress. Her parents were there. My aunt and uncle were there. We had cake, music, tears, and peace. It was the first time in my life that I felt like I was part of a real family. And not once that whole day did I think about Amy or my parents. That's when I knew it was really over. Update 1. It's been about 5 months since it all ended. My daughter is growing fast, smiling, babbling, kicking like she's training for the Olympics. Life has been peaceful. The kind of peace you don't trust at first because you're not used to it. No phone calls from Amy. No passive-aggressive texts from my mother. No surprise emails pretending nothing happened. But a few days ago, something weird happened. I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name typed out. The envelope looked like something out of a bad movie, too formal, too stiff, like it knew it didn't belong. I opened it on the porch while my wife rocked the baby inside. Inside was a printed page, no handwriting, no signature. Just a message. You might want to check who's claiming to be the real owner of your LLC. Check the state filings. Someone's playing games again. I froze. I hadn't touched the LLC since I officially dissolved it months ago. My lawyer had done everything. The state marked it closed. It shouldn't even exist on paper anymore. But that letter, it wasn't random. It had details that only someone involved would know. And something about the wording, it didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a warning. I immediately went online, logged into the state business database, searched for the LLC name. And there it was. Reactivated. 2 weeks ago. By someone using a new business address in another state. Registered under the same name I used. Same federal ID number. Someone had either stolen my identity or found a way to resurrect the LLC and tie it back to me. And the craziest part? The new registered agent listed? Eric. Amy's husband. Not Amy. Not my dad. Him. I haven't called him yet. I haven't told my lawyer. But I have questions. Because either Eric is trying to fix something behind Amy's back. Or he was never the victim he claimed to be. And I'm about to find out which. And if you've made it this far, what do you think? Do you believe the letter was from someone in the family? Or an outsider? What do you think is on that USB drive? And who the hell is Ari? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop your theories in the comments below. Who was lying? Who was playing who? And what you think happens next. And if you enjoyed this story or you've been following along since the beginning, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next.